Hey, everybody. We are jumping into week number 2 of our Signs of Life series and through the 7 signs that Jesus does in the Gospel of John. It's our series leading all the way up to Easter. And we're going to look at John chapter 4 today, beginning in verse 46 and going through 54. This is Jesus healing the royal official's son. And this is the second sign that Jesus does when he's in Cana. Last week we talked about Jesus showing up at a wedding and turning water into wine in Cana of Galilee. And now he has gone a little bit. He had a conversation with Nicodemus in chapter 3. And then the beginning of chapter 4, he has the extended conversation with the woman, the Samaritan woman at Jacob's well. And now here at the end of chapter 4, he has made his way back to Cana, and a royal official approaches him with a son who is on the verge of death. So let's take a look at the text, and then we'll unpack it just a little bit. So this is John 4, 46 to 54. Then he came again to Cana in Galilee, where he had changed the water into wine. Now there was a royal official whose son lay ill in Capernaum. When he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. Then Jesus said to him, "Unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe." The official said to him, "Sir, come down before my little boy dies." And Jesus said to him, "Go, your son will live." The man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. As he was going down, his slaves met him and told him that his child was alive. So he asked them the hour when he began to recover. And then they said to him, "Yesterday, at 1 p.m, the fever left him." The father realized that this was the hour when Jesus had said to him, "Your son will live." So he himself believed, along with his whole household. Now this was the second sign that Jesus did after coming from Judea to Galilee. All right, a couple things. And then we'll go from there. So, like I said, Jesus starts. He does the first miracle, the first sign in chapter 2, in Cana of Galilee at a wedding. Then after that, he goes and he is with his disciples. Sorry, my pages are stuck together for some reason. There we go. He cleanses the temple in Jerusalem, and then he has the conversation with Nicodemus, the Pharisee, in the evening, under cover of darkness. And we have a couple of the most famous verses in all of Scripture, John 3:16 and 3:17, which I think is we miss out on what Jesus is saying if we don't have verse 17 as well. But anyway, then Jesus and John the Baptist. And then we have Jesus and the woman of Samaria at the well. And they have this incredible theological conversation back and forth. And that entire Samaritan village begins to believe in Jesus because of what he has told the Samaritan woman. And then we have this scene here. So verse 43, so we back up just a couple of verses. So when the 2 days were over, that he was staying in Samaria, in that village in Samaria, he went from that place to Galilee. And remember, Galilee's in the north of Jerusalem, just directly west of the Sea of Galilee. Yeah, that's where Cana is. And Jesus himself had testified that the prophet has no honor in the prophet's own country. And when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, since they had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the festival, for they too had gone to the festival. So 43 and 44 help set up one of the things that Jesus says in the text for this particular week. And it's about the people wanting to see a sign. And the reason that that doesn't quite make sense, because it's in the midst of him having speaking with the royal official, is because these two verses here talk about how the Galileans, those in the region, want a sign from Jesus. They want some sort of miraculous kind of moment for them to be able to believe. So So verse 43, excuse me, and 44 is in parentheses in the NRSV. Jesus himself had testified that a prophet has no honor in the prophet's own country. But then when he came to Galilee, the Galileans welcomed him, since they had seen all that he had done in Jerusalem at the festival. So what he did in Jerusalem at the festival was clean the temple. He cleansed the temple and he cast out the money changers and he turned over the tables. Now, John's telling of an inclusion of the cleansing of the temple happens at the beginning of Jesus's ministry, whereas in the Synoptics, it happens at the end of Jesus's ministry and it's sort of the final straw before they get all that they need to crucify him. So it shows up at the very first part of the Gospel of John, and it sets up this tension between the Jewish religious leaders in Jerusalem and Jesus. But they had seen what he had done. They had they'd seen him clean and cleanse the temple. And so when in verse 48, Jesus says to him, says to the royal official, unless you, but here the you is plural. So unless y'all, is the way we would say it in the South, unless y'all see signs and wonders, y'all will not believe. So he's including this royal official in the larger picture and the larger group of Galileans that need to see signs. And so this one has come to beg for a miracle for his son. So let's go to that text. So he comes to Cana in Galilee, again, directly west of the Sea of Galilee. And there was a royal official. Now, just so that you understand who this particular person is, he's not named, but he would have been a member of Herod Antipas's court. Herod Antipas is the Herod who's the king of the Jews at this particular time in the life of Jesus. There's Herod the Great, who was the Herod from Matthew chapter 2, and the Massacre of the Innocents and the wise men and all that kind of stuff. The wise men went and saw Herod the Great. This is Herod Antipas, his son, and he's now the ruler because Herod the Great has died. And so Herod Antipas would have, officials and courtiers and things like that that would do his bidding. And one of these men has a son who has fallen ill, and he's heard about Jesus. And so he comes from Capernaum to Cana, and he is seeking for Jesus to come and heal his son. So he says, he heard that Jesus had come from Judea to Galilee, and he went and begged him to come down and heal his son, for he was at the point of death. So Capernaum is right on the Sea of Galilee, on the northwestern side, the northwestern coast of the Sea of Galilee. So he would have had, this official would have had to come up the hill to Cana, and it's about a day and a half journey on foot. And he would have come to Jesus because he had heard what Jesus had done in Cana earlier, and probably heard about what he did in Jerusalem during the festival. So, but his son is at the point of death. He's almost, he is just about to die, is basically the literal way to translate that phrase. And then Jesus says to him in verse 48, unless y'all see signs and wonders. So this idea of these dynamic kind of moments, these overwhelming visions of what God's power looks like, that's a sign and a wonder, you will not believe. And the official says to him in verse 49, sir, come down before my little boy dies. So he's asking Jesus to come down to Capernaum, because it would literally be geographically, it would be down the hill, down the mountain to the coast. But then Jesus says to him in verse 50, go, your son will live. So Jesus doesn't say, I'll go with you, like he does in other places, other cases in the Synoptics, for sure. he says, go. He sends the royal official back to his son with the words, your son will live. Now, the idea here about go is not just, it's not like get away from me kind of go. It is this, it is this it means to travel or to journey, to depart, but it emphasizes the personal meaning which is attached to reaching the particular destination. So so when Jesus says go, the royal official knows exactly where he is supposed to go. It's not go away. It's not get out of my face. It's go back to Capernaum. Go back to your home. Go back to your son. And he says, go, your son will live. And the man believed, he had faith in the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. And again, this is the idea of starting on his way is setting out immediately and going to a specific destination. So he goes because he believes. He's asked for Jesus to come with him to Capernaum. Jesus says, go, your son will be made well. And then the man, the royal official, goes, he starts out on his way. He starts out back to Capernaum without Jesus because he believes the words that Jesus has said. So he says, and this is verse 50, the second half of verse 50, the man believed the word that Jesus spoke to him and started on his way. As he was going down, as he was geographically getting lower and lower towards sea level in the Sea of Galilee, his slaves, the people who worked for him, showed up, met him halfway, maybe, and told him that his child was alive. And the man asks a question. He asked the question of when. When did my son's fever go away? When did he begin to recover? And they said to him, yesterday at 1 PM, the fever left him. So the man leaves Cana, begins the journey to Capernaum. He's met by his slaves, and they say, your son is alive. And he says, when did this start? When did he start to recover? And the time that he starts to recover is the same time when Jesus said, your son will be made well. Your son will live. And so verse 53, the father realized that was the hour at 1 PM. That was the hour when Jesus said to him, your son will live. So he himself believed along with his whole family, his whole household. All the people that he was responsible for believed in Jesus. The man left Cana because he believed the word that Jesus spoke to him. And when he realized that at that same moment, when Jesus said, your son will live, was the moment that his son started to get well, that his fever broke and he began to recover. Because that's what happened, then he believes, the man believes, and his whole household believes. And then we get a little editorial note from John that this was the second sign that Jesus did after coming from Judea to Galilee. So I talked about last week, and I'll talk about this again on Sunday, is that these signs that Jesus is doing in the Gospel of John are meant to reveal Jesus's character and his glory. They're meant for to be moments where the people who experience them and the people around them begin to see and recognize who Jesus is. And I said, as these signs go on, the circle of who is impacted and the circle of who understands and believes will continue to grow. So last week, when it was the water into the wine, it's the 4 or 5 disciples that believe in Jesus. At the end of verse 10, 11 of chapter 2, it's the disciples that believe. It's 4 or 5 people. Now we have this royal official and his entire household, which would have been his wife and his children, people who worked for him, people who were under his particular purview. So the circle has gotten a little bit wider. Now, remember, in the first sign, it's these Jewish fishermen who are the ones who become disciples and that believe in him. Now we have somebody who works for Herod, who works for the man who is the representative of Caesar in Judea and in Galilee. And so this man, he's heard about Jesus. We're not told that he's a Jew, but he may be, he may not be. So he believes in Jesus. He leaves the scene with Jesus to go to his home and believes because what Jesus said and what actually happened lined up exactly right. Then he believes in Jesus, and his whole household believes in Jesus. And so now the circle is getting wider. More and more people are beginning to experience these signs and beginning to experience who Jesus is and begin to understand who he is. And so this is the second sign. From here out, from beginning with the third sign that we'll see, which is actually in the text, the very next text, in the beginning of chapter 5, the signs will not be identified by the fourth gospel writer. John's not going to tell us, and this was the third sign, and this was the fourth sign, or this was the fifth sign. He's not going to do that. We're going to have to pay attention to the text and see that that Jesus is doing things that are displaying his power, showing his glory, and helping others realize that he is the Messiah. So we've got so now we've covered 2. We have 5 more before we get to Holy Week, and then we have his triumphal entry in chapter 12, and we have his crucifixion and resurrection in chapters 18, 19, and 20. So just that's where we're going. So anyway, the home sheet this week, we'll take a look at the particular differences here in chapter 4. We'll continue with the reading plan that I put forward for this series. It's 2 parts. Hopefully that made sense on the home sheet. The first part is a quick read through the Gospel of John. It's 1 chapter a day for 21 days. And that'll get you all the way through, so 3 weeks. So from this past Monday all the way to the 5th of March will be the quick read. And then we'll go through a slow read. And I'm going to divide the chapters into sections that will take us 35 days to go through, so that we get all the way through the gospel again in the second part of our series. And then when we get to the end of our series, as we lead up to Holy Week and when we get up there, we'll do a slow read through the Holy Week texts and see how John sets up the crucifixion and the resurrection. So I wanted to just share one quote from the research that I've done so far. I've still got some more to do, but this is from N.T. Wright. He's one of my go-to guys for at least some accessible kinds of things. And so this is from John, his commentary on John, part 1. He says, the man, the royal official, believed the word which Jesus spoke to him. The fact that he sets off home without insisting that Jesus come with him from Cana up the hills to Capernaum, up in the hills to Capernaum, down by the lake, is a clear indication that his faith didn't happen because he saw miracles, but because he heard Jesus's words. Now, just remember, Jesus, just before the text that we will talk about for Sunday, there's this sense from Jesus that, that The Galileans are demanding signs and wonders in order to believe. And so he's he it says he says in verse 48, unless you see signs and wonders, you will not believe. They have seen what he's done prior to this, and so he's lumping this in that he's seen these signs and wonders. The man, the royal official, leaves from Jesus' side on believing the word that Jesus speaks, not because he's seen the sign. He doesn't see the sign until he gets home. He hears testimony to it about halfway home from the people who work for him, his servants, who come and meet him on the road. But he doesn't see the sign until he gets home. So his belief in Jesus isn't dependent upon his son being healed. It's dependent upon the word that Jesus has spoken. And he believes that word. And he goes and he sees the sign of the healing of his son. And that's a significant moment in this, because it's expanding the circle of those who believe. First it was the disciples, now it's this man and his household. And as we will see over the next few weeks, it begins to just expand more and more and more as Jesus is revealed, as Jesus reveals his glory to more and more people. And these signs begin to reveal Jesus's power over not just nature, but also over life and death. So I hope this is helpful for you. I appreciate what you do for our church. And if there's anything I can resource you with, questions I can answer, feel free to give me a shout. And just know that I'm praying for you, and I'm happy to help however I can. Thanks. We'll see you next time.